Welcome to the T Row Show. It's your host Keith. It's going to be a little bit of a different show tonight as far as the shows have been going. Okay, so we're going to be talking about resurrection a little bit, but we're also going to be talking about how to gain that or how to enter into that agreement in no uncertain terms. Okay, so we're going to be going to we're going to show you. We really talk about the narrow way a lot on the T Row Show, but nobody really sees where the near of the where they talk about the narrow way, straight gate. Nobody looks it up that I know of, and so it starts. Since all you have to do is go to church, and then the guy up there says, "Look, just accept Jesus into your heart and the set apart Spirit in your heart." He'll say the Holy Ghost into your heart. Um, then you're saved. You're good to go. Just keep going to church and do good things. And God is now in you. Jesus is now in you, and the set apart Spirit's now in you. And that's all you have to do. No big deal. Now, the one thing that is missing from that is this: God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Everybody knows about that, okay? And but that's talking about the world itself and all these things. He reconciled with the whole world after Jesus was resurrected and and ascended into heaven. Now the work began as to why is it taking so long, 2,000 years for him to return? Why is it taking so long? What's going on in all this? Well, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. The behind the scenes work you're looking at is you have to, okay, go find him. And you have to receive your salvation independently. It's a one-on-one thing. Now, why is that? Okay, so the reason why that is because you're dealing with uh, you're dealing with being family. It's the Redeemer. Okay, what was that called, Jen? Something Redeemer.
Kinsman Redeemer.
Kinsman Redeemer. Okay, kinsman means family. So you have to have a relationship with him, with Jesus. You have to form and forge a relationship with him in order to be family, to be a part of that. That's the only way. That's what they're talking about, the narrow way there. You cannot do it by not knowing him. You cannot do it by going to church and say, I'm just going to raise my hands here and praise Jesus. And I'm going to sing a lot and everything else, and all the blessings are going to come to me, and I'm going to get it, and I'm going to heaven. Oh, I know you, Jesus. Oh, no, actually, you don't. You don't know him just praising him. Yes, you see all the good things he did for you, so I'm going to praise that man. No problem. I get that. But there's also a negative part of it. And those negative parts, just like there's the dark light, there's dark parts and there's light parts. There's lows and there's high. And those negative things that people perceive as negative, people ignore that. And man, don't ignore that. Really, seriously, do not ignore that. The smallest things in the world can be put right in front of you. And if you really don't have the correct mindset, you're not going to see it. And it could mean the difference between heaven or hell. We're talking about forever. That's serious. That's not playing around. So I'm going to show you here. Let's go to Romans in that one section. And where was that? Where did that start? Was that it?
It's start.
Okay, we're moving from Romans to Matthew. Sorry, folks, we just got things a little mixed up. So listen carefully to this part. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be open. Or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall he give him a snake? Okay, so I'm going to read 11 and 12. If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask him? So therefore, what he's trying to do right here, if you look at this, he's trying to get you to know the Father and who he is, to have a personal relationship with him. That's the family. Does everybody get that? So he's trying to get you to understand. Is he going to give you a stone if you ask him for bread? He's not cruel. So he's trying to get you to say, okay, this is the Father. Notice nobody's really asking any questions. But therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the Torah and the prophets. So enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter through it. Okay, if you read 13 again, enter through the narrow gate. That's an introduction to the narrow gate, folks. So why don't the churches today say anything about a narrow gate? There's one guy I've seen on YouTube, don't know his name, that talks about he has the narrow gate in the end of his videos. Narrow is the gate. Nobody's talking about it in church. So how can you have a personal relationship but nobody ever talks about that narrow way, ever? And you have to. Now, why are they doing that? What they're doing is they're trying to keep you away from a personal relationship, to know who the Father is, who Jesus is. Jesus has to be able to call you a family, his family and his people. Okay? If he doesn't call you his family and his people, then you cannot become, then he cannot pay your debt or your ransom through the kinsman redeemer. So right there, he's saying, if you're looking at this, or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Okay, so he's comparing them to these people. He's saying, if you're not going to give a stone to your son, why would you think that our Father in heaven is going to do the same? And he starts calling him their father. That's a big deal. Jesus starts calling him, his father, their father. To form what? To form a family. Now, where did that all end? What happened there? So I'm watching a guy today. His name is he's a Russian preacher. His name is Vlad. He's a good man. He is. He's a really good preacher, and I like how he preaches. He had a really good one today that he put up, and what he said was a concept that got me thinking, because I studied Genesis 1 through 4 for about 3 years. I just studied. I kept going over every one of those. I just decided to do it. I used to hang wallpaper and paint, so when I did that, I would read a verse and then go over it in my head all day in Genesis. Because if you don't know what happened in the beginning, you're not going to know where you are today. It's just not going to work. How did I get into the position I am today? So he started talking about another concept, and that concept was he was teaching a bunch of kids, and he was talking about a concept of tithing. He was going through, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, that's seven years. And if we're supposed to live to 70, that's 10% of our life. And those years add up to 10%. So therefore, between 13 and 19, we are the tithing. Okay, that's what he was telling them. We become the tithing. We can't give anything to anybody because those years, it's only going to be your parents anyways. But you're the tithing to our Father in heaven. I thought that was a great concept. It was awesome. Awesome message. And then he started talking about Genesis 1, I think it was Genesis 1 or 2. He starts talking about, let us make man in our image and our likeness. So in my ignorance from years ago, this is back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I was thinking that let us make man in our image. I was thinking there were two separate issues there, two separate creations. And that's what they teach in the identity movement. They teach that there's two creations, one superior to other. And that's where you start thinking that it gets into all kinds of, well, today we call it racism and all that stuff. I have since changed that thinking. I realized it wasn't true. But he says, let's make man in our image. So he's the hour comes into Father, Son, set apart spirit. I learned that on the narrow way. And I started thinking, wow, okay, so if we're made in his likeness, his image and his likeness, something changed. Because his image and his likeness, or his who he is like pure light, pure truth, pure everything. So if that's the case, we need to get into what exactly is going on here, because something really messed up. Okay, so let's go over to Genesis, and we'll start past that. Yeah, we'll start on number 3. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. And they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking about in the garden. In the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden. Yeah, if you could just make it bigger. And Yahweh Elohim called into Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself." And he said, "Who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat?" And the man said, "The woman whom you give to be with me, she gave of me the tree, and I ate." And Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all of the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life." Okay, so that's really basically what you're looking at. Okay, this is what happened. All right, now, when I was listening to Vlad, he was saying just one specific concept, and that concept was very simple. The If the father speaks to the ground, and the ground, to grow or to raise trees, the ground will do that. Okay, so the soil doesn't need the trees need the soil. Think about that for a minute. All right, now if you tell the ocean to create fish, it'll be done. So the ocean doesn't need the fish need the ocean. The ocean will be fine if the fish weren't there. The ground would be fine if the trees weren't there. So think about that for a minute. Everything would be fine. Now, if you were made in his likeness, he would be fine if you weren't there. But you need him. So what was a serpent to do? Think about it just for a minute. What was the serpent trying to do? Now, in the Bible, the way they wrote it, it made it appear as if Adam and Eve sinned. And to a certain extent, they did. He told that they would surely die. Think about that just for a second. They would surely die if they eat from that tree. That was established, surely die. And if it was established, then therefore the serpent knew that if they were to eat of that tree, they would die. That's murder, folks. The serpent went to murder them, and he did. He first lied to them, and then he murdered them. And then who's the one that said he was the first liar and the first murderer? Yahushua, Jesus. He was the first one to say it. He said, no, he's the first liar and the first murderer. He's talking about what happened in the garden. It's very evident. So when you get past all this rigmarole and this way of thinking, then you start realizing, wait a minute, there's something wrong here as far as the story now, because have you noticed they never really blamed the serpent for what he did in there. He got punished, but it wasn't really blamed. It was really focused on Adam and Eve and their mistake, the way it was written. So it was influenced a little bit on how it was written, a little bias there. The facts are all there, but the way something's written, you can read a bias in there. You may be telling the truth, but you're slanting a little bit on how that truth comes out. So that came to me, and I was watching this. I'm looking at this, and I was like, wait a minute. The serpent came to murder them. That changes everything. That changes things as to who he is. So you guys out there trying to worship that thing or follow his ways or make him out to be some kind of freedom fighter, you're extremely deceived. He would rather see you murdered and dead. Now, what does murder and dead mean in the spirit? For us, it means separated from our Father in heaven. We are no longer his likeness, and we're no longer his image. That separates us from our Father in heaven. So that's what happened. He came to murder them, and he did. It was never just stated that way. Those words were somehow taken out or removed. That he literally did this. They or moved into different sections. You would surely die. And then, oh, no, that's not true. Lie. He's just afraid you're going to become like him. Lie. She takes the fruit, she dies. Murdered her. And then murdered him. Because they were no longer in his likeness and no longer in his image. And they were no longer anything that they were before. So you can read Genesis 1 and 2 as two different creations, or you can look at it for what it was. Doesn't matter if there were 15 different creations. That doesn't matter. What matters is they were murdered. So what's the simplicity? He tells you this in Matthew. The simplicity of it's very easy. What we never think about is a one-on-one relationship with Jesus. And if you have a one-on-one relationship with Jesus, it's the same as you would have a relationship with your brother. Now, there's a blanket promise all over the land that you will be. There's going to be a rapture. There's a blanket promise there, and others have back in my day they associated that with a raptor, raptor, things coming down to grab you. They did that. They did everything they could do to get rid of the whole rapture thing because they're saying it was never written there. Well, one part of it does say that one man will be there, two men will be there, and then then there will be one. One will disappear and one doesn't. If you want to call that a rapture, you can call it a rapture. It doesn't really matter at this point. Okay? Now, Jesus went in there and he was resurrected. Everybody knows that. Nobody has ever fought that. If he resurrected Lazarus, why couldn't he resurrect himself? This was the weird part I was going through just about, I don't know, the last 2 weeks, as I was saying, why would it be such a shock that Jesus raised himself from the dead, okay, on the third day? Why is that such a shock when just before that, he resurrected Lazarus on the third day? That doesn't make any sense. Why would there be such a shock? Who knows? They wrote it a little slanted in one way or another. And the way the words were written. I'm not saying don't trust the Bible. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that it's not true. So don't go there.
Amen. Look.
Okay. So be sure. All right, folks. This particular message in this particular show, I knew was going to be attacked. It's been attacked about 5 times so far on this show. Whether it's technical or whether it's people interrupting or whatever it is, it's been interrupted. So if it gets a little jumpy, in other words, if I'm jumping around, I forgot where I was the last time. I just got interrupted, and it was like for another 10 minutes. So I forgot what it was last time, or what the last thing I was saying. So if I don't start there, or it feels like we're jumping around, please forgive me. That's just the way that this particular show is going. Okay. So going down the narrow way is your particular journey. to meeting Jesus and to understanding. If you don't think he came off the cross, if you don't believe in the resurrection, and you think everyone was just lying about Lazarus and everybody was just lying about Jesus, you're not going to get this. Okay, because you don't believe in the resurrection in the first place. You don't believe that he came back from the dead, which defeated the devil, by the way. Because the devil, what happened there? The devil, whatever he established as being able to kill Yahweh's children and murder them, was reversed. That took away his ability to be established anything on earth. And it was reestablished that what he did was not true. The children were never murdered, and reversed it. Because they're now, they could overcome whatever he could establish as death and the separation of them from their father. And it was all done through Jesus. I never really understood what the defeat was, and that was the defeat. By defeating him, he could never establish anything. If he can't establish anything, how can he ever take the Most High's throne? He can't establish anything. It's done. It's over. He's known as a liar. He boasted that he murdered the children over and over up until Jesus came. And when Jesus came, he snapped that head off that serpent with his heel, didn't he? So there you go. That's one part of it. You got another one here that talks about this. We were therefore buried with him. This is in Romans, through immersion into death. Okay, that has Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father. So also we should walk in newness of life. He's telling you right there what's going on. But then again, you go back to the churches and they say, oh, this is a blanket thing. If you just accept him and the Holy Spirit into your heart, you'll be saved. Wonderful. That's great. How do you get to know him? Have you ever heard out of his mouth that you're his brother? Have you ever heard out of his mouth that you are a part of his family? Or was this something that the preacher told you down at the building that he has to pay for? I'm not dogging all preachers. I'm saying most of them don't bring up the narrow way. The narrow way is about you becoming his brother and part of his family. That's what it's about. I know because I've been going down it for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's what it's all about. Where you can talk to him about anything. It doesn't matter. He's your brother. So here's the question. This is something nobody ever brings up. This is something that has never been asked. Even though it says it in there, it says it in different ways, but never on point as to what the reality of this is. So you have, we were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, and that has Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father. So also we should walk in a newness of life. Can you go back to Matthew, please? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. I just read something over on the other right that will help. Go back to Rome. There we go. Thank you. For the wages of sin is death, but the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life in Messiah, Yahushua, our master. Okay, think about that just for a second. Don't forget this. Okay, go back to the other. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Thank you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be open. Here it is, folks. Has anyone ever asked to be resurrected from the dead. That's your brother. If it's a gift, did you ever ask for your gift? Through Jesus. Have anyone just simply asked, may I be resurrected? How do you know that you're going to be raptured out? Are you on that list? Who knows? Or are you just assuming you're on the list to be raptured out? Or did the preacher tell you that you're on the list because this is a blanket offer for everyone? When each individual man had to seek his own salvation, how can he do that? He has to get to know Jesus through his lifetime and become his brother. No one asks. That's the thing. And that's what's missing. Everyone treats him like he's a goose that laid the golden egg. Oh, I want to be that goose's friend so I can get one of his golden eggs. Or, hey, Jesus got everlasting life. I'm just going to go take that. If you don't ask him, if you go into a man's house and you take a fork without asking, what did you do? You stole from the man. You stole from him. So if you just assume that you're going to be resurrected, you stole that. That's you're stealing. You never asked him. You are not in the likeness of him. You're not in his image. You were murdered. If it happened to Adam, it happened to you. If it happened to Eve, it happened to you. And the only way out of that death in the land of the dead is to be resurrected. And he's the only man that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt twice that he overcame death. Once with Lazarus and once with himself. And told you he was going to do it, and he did it. But you never ask, may I be resurrected? May I have the gift of resurrection? The gift that I believe was prepared for me, because that's what the book says. But I want to know if it's true. You have to have that evidence. If you don't have it, you have nothing. Jesus, my brother. Can I get my portion that pays my ransom to get away from the devil that murdered me? That's why I've been interrupted 5 times tonight. At least. Because the devil doesn't want you to know that you murdered him or he murdered you. He lied to you, then he murdered you. And you've been living under the dead, with the dead since that time. And that dead is the curse of Adam. And he's here. Jesus came there and came back so that you could have a personal relationship with him so he can call you brother. And that's how it works. That's how the narrow way is. And when I heard that and I saw that this morning, early afternoon, I said, we've got to do a T-row on it. We got to get this out. But I guarantee you, we're going to be attacked on this. Because if you don't ask, you're stealing. And the only way to secure heaven is the Father locked all the doors. He shut heaven up completely, except for one way, and that's through Jesus. The man that guards the straight gate. And he supervises on the narrow way. So you can get to know him. That was done for you. You can know that you're not an enemy in your own heart. But first you have to understand that you're living among the dead. Everything around you is dead. Everybody you see is dead. And the people that are going down the narrow way I've talked to, they all say, man, everybody's dead. I said, you got it. They were all murdered. This doesn't give you a break. What this does is help you through the narrow way. May I go through the straight gate? If you get a no, ask again. Knock and it shall be open. Eventually, he's going to open it if you keep going. He's not going to waste time on tire kickers. People just seeing if they want salvation. It's somebody that cares about their salvation and cares about themselves and is concerned about their everlasting life. All the rest, not concerned. If they don't care, why should anybody else? That's the essence, and that's the key. You need to ask. If you don't ask, you'll never get there. You'll never get salvation. Because everything you're doing, you're stealing. You're a thief. So, if you want salvation, ask for salvation. If you want through the straight gate and go down the narrow way, ask for it. And if they ask why you want it, tell them. If it's as simple as, I don't want to burn in hell, that's good enough. At least you care about yourself. It may seem selfish at first, but at least you care about yourself. And you care about your future. Answer's good enough. Next station. Next stage of the narrow way. But in long term, if you want to be resurrected, ask for it. No one has ever asked that question that I know of, or never asked for that. I've always seen them. They're always saying, and when you ever see a church that says, and God will do this for you, and God will do that for you, blah, 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 blah. How do you know? Did you ask? Did you ask anyone for that? You see, there's a bunch of people that the Father's trying to reach. And those people were all murdered, separated from him. The devil murdered his children. It's not very good PR, is it, for the devil? Now you understand why they're wanting to stop that? They're trying to make a martyr out of him. Oh, he's seeking freedom from the oppressive this and oppressive that, deceiving people left and right. And that deception, your mind is thinking, just like mine was, because this is how we were raised, that Jesus did resurrection because the Father said he could. But you never thought you could be, because you never saw yourself as dead. How many people say, oh, time of death? No, it's time of life. They see themselves as, oh, I'm not of the dead. So you think people in heaven are dead? No, they're not dead. They're more alive than you'd ever imagine. They've never lived. Here is death. There is life. And if you have resurrection, you have life. The way, the truth, and the life. That's what he's talking about. The way, the truth, and life. He can give you, he can resurrect you out of here, away from the dead, away from that murderer and that liar that killed your forefathers, all the way back to the beginning. That's why I studied it for 3 years. If you don't know what happened in the beginning, you'll never know what happens later. And you'll never know what your position is. Thanks for listening to the T-Row show. Is there anything I missed? Sarah?
No, I think you
Okay, you muted
covered
out.
it all. But just to
Okay.
add, I guess, Jesus said dead bury their own.
Jesus said what?
Let the dead bury their own.
Let the dead bury the dead. He knew they were dead, right? That always confuses everybody because they don't see themselves as being dead, as being murdered. They don't see it. If you're separated from the Father and you're no longer his likeness and in his image, that means you died. What you were is no longer. Let the dead bury the dead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay. In Genesis 3, if you read further than what you were reading earlier, Elohim said that, and now unless he put out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So the garden was guarded by flames, flaming swords from the cherubim. And in order to get back into the garden is the narrow way, and he's describing it right here. And that's eating from the tree of life. And then when you go back over to Romans, he talks about the narrow gate and how hard pressed it is because you're going through those flames. So the narrow way is depicted here in Genesis.
So now we know, if you just read it that way and put it there under the tree of life, that Jesus is the tree of life, because he said, if you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will live forever. Describing himself as the tree of life. But the dummies that were there thought, oh, you mean I got to eat his flesh and drink his blood? Ew, that's cannibalism. That's the first thing they thought.
Yeah, so to get back to that state of walking with the Father in the garden, you have to go through this narrow way. There's no other way. And that is through Jesus being hard pressed, being refined, going through everything that the narrow way is, which is what he went through on his journey, or torture, to his death on the cross, which is another depiction of the narrow way. So it was written in the beginning of Scripture that this is what has to be for everyone.
Okay. And then the main reason why this all gets really messed up is because people don't ask. They've never asked. They automatically assume, well, I accepted it in my heart. The set apart spirit's in me. Holy Ghost is in me and Jesus is in me. I'm a new creature. Okay, but did you ask whether you could be resurrected or not? Did you ask for any of the blessings at all? Did you ask for any of the refinement? Did you ask for anything, or did you just get a blanket, everything belongs to me? Because Jesus said so. Has Jesus ever called you his brother? Have you ever talked to him? Have you ever met him in the spirit? Have you ever met him? That's the way it is.
Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened to you. Those are 3 actions. Ask, seek, and knock. Nothing says wait, sit back. None of that. Those are all actions.
Watch TV. watch your nightly porn, have your nightly drink, get your nightly snort. Doesn't say anything like that. It says ask, seek, and knock. That's simple. That's easy to get. But the first of those is ask, so that you're not a thief. You're trying to go into his kingdom and his house. Everything belongs to him. Everything belongs to him on earth. But you assume that it's all yours. You never ask him for it. So if the real owner comes back right now, you're going to be sitting there and he's going to ask, did you eat my cake? And you got icing all over your face, and say, no, I own this. Oh, you do? Okay. And you got icing on your face. Not realizing you never asked. You just took, because they portrayed Jesus as some kind of a hippie dude on the beach. Yeah, I forgive and love you, man. Everything's cool. Don't harsh my buzz. That's what everybody is told, that he's just one big wuss. And he's just a big pushover. Trust me, he's not. It's one of the hardest men I've ever met. He is strong and he doesn't play at all. When they talk about iron rod, you're going to get a whole new experience of iron rod and being ruled over by one. And it will scare the crap out of you. Just, I've seen it. I remember getting yelled at by him for 20 minutes straight when I first got on the narrow way. All his frustration that he had for me, I caught it. 20 minutes. Anybody ever get yelled at by Jesus before? It's a whole new experience of all the stupid things that I did throughout my life. And all the sin I did, everything. So there you go. Thanks for listening to the T Rose Show. Sorry about the interruptions, but I think the message got out. And we're going to keep doing this message over and over. You have to ask. Please stop stealing from him. You have to ask. It says it right there. First thing, ask. Understand, he owns all of it. It's all given to him. All the power in heaven and on earth has been given to him. He sits at the right hand of the Father. Ask. Don't steal from him, and it won't jeopardize your future. Most important thing out there. Thanks for listening to the T Rose Show. We'll see you next time.